Ladies and gentlemen, every once in a while, if you look at two different articles from two different publications and kind of try to not just use basic logic, but use a base of knowledge that apparently doesn't exist in today's media, you're able to see a picture that's completely different from Trump down 14 points nationally. President Trump is on his way to re-election, and it's going to be against Hillary Clinton. It's not going to be against Biden, because with Biden, they wouldn't even win the popular vote. But here, Politico today and CNN the other day, you have to look at these articles because you have to look at these headlines amid a stream, an ocean of negativity, piece them together, and then see the actual real picture. This is Politico. Just a couple hours ago, we're thinking landslide. Beyond D.C., GOP officials see Trump on glide path to re-election. Conventional indicators suggest the president's bid for second term is in jeopardy, but state and local GOP officials see a different election unfolding. This is just a couple of hours ago in Politico. The people on the ground in states that have to be won in the Electoral College know that President Trump has infinitely more enthusiasm, or there has voters that are far more enthusiastic to vote for him than Biden. He, even in the polls that say he's down, he's up in terms of enthusiasm. So very enthusiastic voters, he's up by 35 points or so. It's 34% Biden. 34% of Biden's voters are very enthusiastic, and 69% of Trump voters are very enthusiastic. Now, the 69% of Trump supporters are very enthusiastic because they want a president to address the trade imbalance, the $400 billion trade deficit with China. They want a president to sign a peace deal, which is what President Trump's administration did in late February, early March, to end America's longest-running military conflict. They want a president to sign the First Step Act, or they want a president who presided over record-low unemployment before the self-induced mini depression that we have. It's not mini, it's actually, not a depression, but 30 to 40 million people unemployed. That was self-induced. Nobody blames Trump for that. We had record low Black and Latino unemployment, and we had record low unemployment. Now, if you look, we'll get to that Politico article in a second, but all you have to do is look at NBC News. Latinos on track to be largest share of non-white voters in 2020. In the next presidential election, 32 million Hispanics will be eligible to vote. Just slightly more than the 30 million voters who are black. So, Latinos will be the largest share of non-white voters in 2020. And it's about 2 million more Hispanics will be eligible to vote than black voters. That's what NBC News, if I'm reading this correctly, said. Just slightly more than 30 million voters who are black. Okay. So, what do you get in CNN? CNN, you get this article. Biden is doing worse than Clinton among Hispanic voters. This is June 11th. This was on June 11th. And you look at recent polls suggest Trump is outperforming where he was 4 years ago with a key part of the Democratic coalition, Hispanics. You're not going to in Florida and other swing states. If you're not outperforming Trump in the Latino vote, okay. President Trump got close to 30% of Hispanic Americans and Latinos. So he got 30% of the Latino vote, or like 30%. If he gets more than that, he'll do even better this election. Look at recent polls suggest Trump is outperforming where he was 4 years ago with a key part of the Democratic coalition, Hispanics. They could have implications. This could have implications for what electoral strategy Biden may need to take. It ain't going to be Biden, but Clinton crushed Trump with Hispanic registered voters in the final 2016 pre-election polls. Well, who cares? President Trump won 28 to 30% of the vote. She led 61 to 23%. Okay. Biden, on the other hand, holds an average of 58% to 33%. Now, if that's the case, because President Trump in the polls showed that he only had 23% support. It was actually 28% support. So add 5%. He could get 38% of the Latino vote. If you are a Hispanic or Latino Trump supporter, give me your thoughts below in the pinned comment. I mean, in the comment section. Biden, on the other hand, holds an average of 58% to 33% lead among Hispanic registered voters. But then it goes on to talk about, okay, this is exactly what I said. Doing the math, Biden's margin is about 25 points, is 10 points lower than Clinton's. So he is performing 10 points lower among a key demographic group for Democrats and in swing states like Florida especially. But getting back to the Politico article. By most conventional indicators, Donald Trump is in danger of becoming a one-term president. The economy is a wreck. The pandemic persists, and his poll numbers have deteriorated. The economy is a wreck because of you gave the keys to the economy to a bunch of immunologists who would never open up the economy ever for fear of we can go on forever. You don't give the keys to. I don't go if I have ED. I don't go to my podiatrist. So if I want to talk about, if I want to ensure that the economy runs while at the same time preventing the pandemic from harming vulnerable people, I don't go to an immunologist and say, here you go, here's the keys to the entire United States economy. What do you think we should do? Shut down everything. So that's what happened. You couldn't simply say, okay, healthy people work, masks, social distancing, people who are vulnerable, stay home, and self-quarantine, all that stuff. You couldn't do that. And you can look at countries around the world, from Sweden to GOP states that didn't shut down. You can look at you don't see absolute carnage at all. In fact, you see roughly the same numbers in aggregate. Because the aggregate numbers are about the same or a lot less, because 5 Democratic-run states account for over half of all the lives lost in the entire United States. So you look at Wyoming, or you look at Oklahoma, or you look at Nebraska, not New York, New Jersey, Michigan, Pennsylvania, and Illinois. Those 5 states account for over half of all the lives lost. Go look at the New York. And if it was the other way around, if let's say Alabama, Mississippi, Texas, Nebraska, if it was just a red state issue, they would harp on it forever. It's a red state issue. It's mismanagement. It's something to do with red states. Why are people suffering more in red states than in blue states? But anyway, we can go on forever regarding that. But throughout the Republican Party's vast organization in the states, the operation approach to Trump's re-election campaign is hardening around a fundamentally different view. Interviews with more than 50 state, district, and county Republican Party chairs depict a version of electoral landscape that is no worse for Trump than 6 months ago, and possibly even slightly better. According to this view, the pandemic is on its way out, and the economy is coming back. Well, I mean, if the Democrats have to rely on the pandemic, then you're not going to have a shutdown forever. So now you see the political motive behind all of this. When it was the primaries in Arizona, Illinois, Florida, and then Wisconsin, they allowed people to go to the primaries, not to work. No, not work. But they definitely allowed people to vote because it's their sacred right. In a primary that DNC lawyers stated they could pick their nominee anyway. Anyway, it's going to be Hillary Clinton. She's going to be nominee. I will have made the biggest political call of all time. Subscribe to H.A. Goodman's other channel right now. The link is below in the pinned comment. That's a great channel. I'm even more my wacky self on that channel. And share my Times of Israel article, Hillary Clinton, not Biden, will be nominee. And share my Huffington Post article written in 2017, Hillary Clinton 2020 is a reality. Get ready for 8 years of Trump. Thank God President Trump's a great president. But nobody can say why they're voting for Biden. He would veto Medicare for all. He's not going to defund the police. What on earth is he going to do other than he's basically to the right of Hillary Clinton on a lot of issues. And he presided over a failed NATO intervention that obliterated and destroyed a country in Libya. So that country's been in chaos and mayhem since the wonderful smart power of President Obama and Hillary Clinton and Joe Biden. But you can't expect the average lofty moral liberal to care. They don't care. They care what you say, because words mean more than actual countries demolished by their foreign policy. They care what you say. They care about what Trump says because it influences people, and his words emanate through sound waves and into the homing beacon located in the brains of really bad, horrible, racist monsters. That's how their disagreement or their contempt, the reason they despise Trump is his personality. He didn't get us into never-ending counterinsurgency conflicts like Bush. He didn't, he didn't run a failed NATO intervention like President Obama, or have a Secretary of State with private servers that had top secret intelligence on them. If President Trump had the scandals and controversies that President Obama and Hillary Clinton and Bush did, I mean, there would be reasons to really despise the president. But Democrats, media, Hollywood covers up anything to do with Biden, and especially Madam Secretary and previous presidents, and focuses on, Trump forced out peaceful protesters. No, they weren't. Look at the U.S. Park Police statement on it. How can they continue with that lie when U.S. Park Police officers were actually hospitalized by these wonderful, peaceful people? 11 were hospitalized. So, again, this is not like every miserably failed propaganda spin. You could just look up. But he's not 14. President Trump is on his way to defeating Clinton, but let's just assume for a second, because I will have made the biggest political call of all time, but let's assume for a second it's Biden, which it ain't going to be, but let's say it's Biden. Biden would not get the popular vote. He doesn't even have the same support among one of the biggest voting bases in the Democratic Party as Clinton did. And Clinton barely won the popular vote, and she outspent him 2-1. And you had Gary Johnson. So this ain't going to be pretty. It's not going to be fun. You had Gary Johnson taking 4.5 million votes. The more bad things happen in the country, it just solidifies support for President Trump. It's true, said Philip Stevens, GOP chairman in Robeson County, North Carolina. You got to understand, one of the reasons Democrats won't win, and then they talk about the enthusiasm of Trump supporters in that Politico article. I know I was a lifelong Democrat up until a couple years ago. I was the biggest Bernie Sanders booster on the internet, according to the Huffington Post, and the unofficial scribe of Sanders' most hardcore voters, according to the Washington Post. Those links are below in the pinned comment. I know why a person, well, at least in 2016, would vote for President Trump, would vote for Bernie Sanders. But I have all of that with President Trump and more. I have a president. And stepping foot in North Korea, even with what's going on right now between North and South Korea, is still a major accomplishment, because now, if there's a flare-up in tensions, the chances are, or there's at least an avenue towards reducing and lessening those tensions, because he helped begin détente between North and South Korea. So it's still a major, major accomplishment. Then you had a peace deal signed to bring our soldiers home and our men and women from Afghanistan. And he's open to bringing home Americans from Iraq. So, again, this is not important to Democrats. It is not important. They don't care. The trade deficit with China, they do not care. It's not important to them. NAFTA turns into the USMCA. They don't care. They live in a cyber reality called Twitter, and those topics are not retweeted. Medicare for all isn't even really, who's talking about that? That was Bernie Sanders and Democrats utilized that to just drum up interest for the Democratic Party, and no one's talking about that now. Just like the Green New Deal, nobody's talking about it. Just like abolishing police, that was thrown out the window also. Tell me a radical, hardcore progressive policy that the socialists and the anarchists and the left-leaning people want now that Democrats are talking about. And then if you talk about the national anthem, I don't see Pelosi taking a knee. I don't see Schumer taking a knee. They did when they wanted to for a publicity stunt, but not during the national anthem because they know they won't win another election in any country. Even if the protest is noble, it's a noble protest, okay? What Colin Kaepernick did, it's noble to protest to save people's lives. That is a different story from what would happen in any country, including this country, if you see politicians kneeling during the national anthem. And Democrats know this. So they're duplicitous in every way. Okay, they want to change the names of military installations. Fine. Okay, where does it stop? Because if the issue is you're changing the names, these people fought for slavery, well, what about George Washington? How long before we take the Washington Memorial and Jefferson Memorial and just bulldoze them? Why does it? The left is not going to do that. Democrats would never. But you look at the history of the country, it's the same correlation. Washington and Jefferson owned human beings as well. So what do you do if the history of your country is such where you can't do away with the entire foundation of the history of your country? So Democrats, they don't take their logic to its conclusion, which is doing away with the Washington and Jefferson memorials and any statue or anything to do with any of the founding fathers who owned human lives and human beings. So what Democrats do is they're really good at public relations, and it's like this millennial journalism where you just focus on what's really whatever holds political utility and serves as a foil against President Trump. You're going to kneel as a show of support, but not during the national anthem, which is exactly what the actual issue is all about. Okay. And then George Floyd was murdered in Minneapolis, and Eric Garner was murdered in New York City. These are Democratic-run cities and Democratic-run states and machines and Democratic machines, but it's somehow Trump's fault. Somehow Trump's fault because of his words. And his response was bad. And media covers up everything, and they get away with everything. And Biden, 3 days before George Floyd was murdered, said, if you have a problem choosing between me or Trump, you ain't black. That is more horrible. I think that's far more racist and bigoted than anything attributed to Trump, because they always slice up everything he says and add media adds meaning and intent to anything that they can't find within a specific quote. So Trump never said, but when he said both sides have fine people, he was talking about conservatives who wanted to keep statues up, not the actual racist, horrible monsters. But again, then you take the millennial political viewpoint. Well, those people are just as bad. It's like, oh, here we go. But still, Trump wasn't referring to those people, and he never needed to. Because Democrats believe all the time, their lives are involved. Bigoted Russian, horrible nationalist supremacist helped Trump win. Wrong. He now has more Latino support and Hispanic support. More than before. Not less. More. And you will see also, President Trump will get a greater percentage of the black vote. Black voters and African American voters will vote more for President Trump this election. Okay, if you look, 14% of black men voted for President Trump in 2016. And I think that percentage will go even higher. Give me your thoughts below. This is a really important, this is a very, very important segment. Share this segment with anyone who thinks that Trump is on his way to defeat. Give me your thoughts below. Subscribe to H.A. Goodman's other channel right this second. And share my Times of Israel and Huffington Post articles. And ladies and gentlemen, a bunch of my articles, writing, my author pages, they're all below in the pinned comment. If you like any of my previous writing, share it on Twitter and Facebook. I do not have Twitter or Facebook. I think that everyone should delete their accounts. I think it's going to be very unhealthy from here on out. But if you see anyone impersonating me, they're breaking the law on Twitter, please go ahead and report them. Take screenshots, report them to Twitter, please. Thank you so very, very much.